Today's podcast topic is RSC Anderlecht. Because it's historically been one of, if not the biggest club in Belgium. They've won 34 titles, most recently in 2016-17. They've won the UEFA Cup in 1983, the UEFA Club World Cup and Super Cup in 1976 and 1978. They've got pedigree. They're a historic club, especially in terms of the youth academy as well. And signing players very young and then bringing them through and then selling them on for a massive profit further down the line to bigger clubs in bigger European leagues. So from a scouted football perspective, Anderlecht are always a club that we have maybe not a really close eye, but we've always got them in the back of our minds, thinking, well, sooner or later, there are going to be some very good players coming through here. You just need to look at the alumni. Romelu Lukaku was there between the age of 13 and 18. Youri Tielemans was there for 15 years before he moved away from Belgium. Dries Mertens was there for his sort of early developmental teenage years. Vincent Kompany, who we'll get onto, Leander Dendoncker at Wolves, Dennis Pratt at Leicester, and going even further back, Enzo Schifo back in the day. But as well as that, they also had Aleksandar Mitrovic, who was there, who not an academy graduate, but was brought in from Partizan Belgrade as a teenager and really set the Belgian league on fire at that time, around 2015. But going back to Vincent Kompany, and for anybody who isn't aware, Vincent Kompany, when he left Manchester City, or sort of semi-retired from Manchester City, he became the player coach of Anderlecht in 2019. Got off to a terrible start, and then just became just a player again, and now he's the coach again. Last season they finished 8th, which was because the season was obviously curtailed by coronavirus. But how was that sort of received? In terms of Belgian football, seeing Anderlecht slump to 8th. I know they'd been on a bit of a slide, going from 3rd or 5th to 6th and then 8th. How was that received in Belgium?
Yeah, I guess people weren't that surprised. Guess we're in terms of stuff we'll kind of get on to talking about as to why this has kind of happened to Anderlecht. But yeah, when you look at their history, and you talked about their history there, titles, this team's always competing. They're always near the top of the league. They're always pushing in cup competitions. They're qualifying for Europe. They're doing all these things. So to see a side like that kind of slumping in mid-table was bizarre. And yeah, I think as well, if you just look at the table, you can see the problem straight away is that they just drew so many games. They just could not find a way to win the games that they should have. And it's kind of repeating itself a little bit this season as well. The same issues are kind of there. And yeah, like you said, Vincent Kompany, he did get off to a bad start last year. He had to step down. I guess he was kind of saved in a way because the reason that had to be given was he didn't actually have the right license. So he didn't have the correct license to be a coach at the level. He's now working towards it, so he's allowed to manage this season. But yeah, so he wasn't allowed to continue as a coach. He just had to become a player. But yeah, it didn't go very well. And now he's kind of come back. So they brought someone else and then they've sacked that person. Because the issue still persisted, and now he's back again for kind of a second crack at the coaching job.
But presently, obviously, we still have Vincent Kompany there. This year, in terms of on the pitch, it seems as though the effect that many thought that a defensive stalwart like Vincent Kompany would have, on the team, defensive solidity and the like, that appears to be occurring. They've only Club Brugge have conceded fewer goals than Anderlecht in the Belgian Pro League this season. Is that something that you've seen that's been reflective of the style that Kompany's tried to bring in?
Yeah, I think he definitely deserves a lot of credit for the defensive improvement. At the beginning of the season, this definitely wasn't the case. There's kind of a joke going around that the best time to score against Anderlecht was just wait until the 80th minute because they were just conceding shed loads of goals in the last 10 minutes of games. But you can tell he's worked on that, and you could see him, if he had hair, he'd be pulling it out most of the time when this was happening. The frustration was visible on his face. But I think an important signing that they've made has been Matt Miazga on loan from Chelsea. I think he's really helped kind of bring a little bit of leadership to that back four. The problem is that like what Kompany wants to do is he likes to play the possession game. He likes to pass it out from the back, and at times the players just don't look comfortable doing that. But he's like insisted on it and kept doing it, and slowly but surely it's getting a little bit better. But while they're really good defensively, and yeah, like you said, like second best defense in the league, like you can't argue with the improvements he's made there. Going forward, it's been a massive struggle for them. Percy Tau was quite good for them at the beginning of the season. He's gone back to Brighton. That left a gap in terms of creativity. They haven't really filled that. They're very reliant on Lucas Nemecha scoring penalties. I'm sure we'll speak about him later. But yeah, and I think what hasn't helped Kompany as well is that the goalkeeping situation hasn't been ideal. Van Klomberger, who's their first choice keeper, has been injured for quite a while now. And poor old Vellenreuter has been like the backup keeper, and he's made a couple of mistakes for them to concede some goals. A few weeks ago against Kortrijk, he literally just like punched the ball into one of the attacking players for them to concede. And the problem is when they do concede, they find it quite hard to then go on and score because they struggle to score. Like they're still drawing games because if they concede, they maybe score one, or if they score one and then concede, like that's not really going to help them. So yeah, he's definitely improved that end. It's now kind of he's got to focus on the attacking end to really make a properly balanced team.
But on sort of the Manchester City thing with Vincent Kompany being the head coach, can you see a partnership perhaps being struck in future with more players coming to Anderlecht because of that Kompany link from Manchester City, or will the relationship, the ownership essentially that they have of Lommel, is that going to complicate things if Lommel end up getting promoted?
Yeah, no, it's really interesting because obviously there have been those links, and I think it's weird in the way that some of the other players they brought in haven't been from City. So they brought in Matt Miazga, and I presume that is Kompany working. He knows Matt Miazga from having seen him play for Chelsea and teams like that. Like he'll just know that he's a player that he can rely on. Josh Cullen as well, they brought in from West Ham. So there's that. I think there will be a link to the Premier League. I'm not sure whether, like you said, I don't know whether it's going to be with City because of Lommel. But then again, it depends. Like if Lommel don't get out of the second tier, because it is difficult to get out of the second tier. Like it's not the easiest thing. It depends how much City want. It depends how City want to use Lommel, I guess. Because it may be that like a player like Nemecha, it'd have been a complete waste of time for him to go to Lommel. Like he's clearly too good for that level. Like the level he'd have been at is the Belgian Pro League. He's shown that like he'd have scored goals for fun and it wouldn't have helped him. So maybe they can kind of exploit those players that are like City are thinking, okay, we don't want them to go into a second tier team. We want them to go play at a higher level in a team that could actually eventually compete at the higher end of a league for a guy that we trust. So I think, yeah, he probably could work that. But also because they've got their own young players and stuff like that, it's like, is that actually good for the club? Should they just actually be focusing on their own youngsters because they need to kind of get money out of them and stuff? So it's kind of like, yeah, like how much of it do you rely on, or do you just like you pick up Nemecha because you needed a striker? Like use it when you need it, but don't use it to kind of become a feeder club, I guess, or like a second City team that like helps them out too much and doesn't actually help Anderlecht out.
Yeah, and I think that relationship dynamic will be interesting to keep an eye on. And sort of looking to the future, Vincent Kompany's obviously there. He's very much in the infancy of his coaching career. Do you see perhaps a changing of the guard essentially at Anderlecht, where the expenditure that they've made over the past few seasons, which hasn't worked out, they're gonna completely change tack and say, hand the keys essentially to Kompany and say, bring through this next generation of Anderlecht youth team players, develop the next Lukaku, Tielemans, Dries, Mertens, those types of players. Under your tutelage, with of course your reputation playing a big part in that. Is that something you could perhaps see for the future if they manage to? I mean, they look like they're going to improve on last season's eighth place, and obviously if they break back into the top four, obviously comes the finances that come with European competition. Is that something that you could perhaps see in the future? Vincent Kompany playing a starring role as a not just a player there, but also as a manager now.
I really hope so. But if I'm honest, I'm not sure. Like the problem you have at Anderlecht is, like we've said earlier in the show, about how successful they are as a club. Like this is one of, if not the biggest club in Belgium. Like, this club is massive. They must be competing. Like, to have like 2 or 3 seasons of not competing, I don't think you can survive that, even if you're Vincent Kompany. So I think you have to be able to show, like, you're kind of treading two kind of sides where you're trying to financially sort yourself out, but you still need to be competitive because that's what's expected of you. Like, you're Anderlecht, you're like this massive club. You have to be exciting, you have to be entertaining, you have to be like pushing the top teams. And I think fans will probably understand at the moment like why this isn't happening because of the financial situation and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, like, at some point they're going to have to kind of balance between these young guys and having good experienced players that aren't on massive amounts of money. So I think it's going to take some like frugal investment and kind of being a little bit cleverer in the transfer window in who you bring in and like where you reinvest this money that you do get in. And also, like, kind of like I said earlier, like eking every little bit that you can out of these young talented players like Lukaku to be successful. Because yeah, you need to get into the European places as Anderlecht. Like, no matter what, you should still be able to do that with the players at your disposal. And you kind of look around the rest of the league and there's other clubs in sort of a similar situation. So their rivals, basically Standard Liège, are in a very similar situation, but their problem is they don't have the youngsters to sell like Anderlecht do. They don't have the talented youngsters coming through like Anderlecht do. So Anderlecht fans will be looking and saying, well, we should be doing better than Standard Liège because our youngsters are better. We can sell more players than them. We should be competing more than they are at the top end of the league. So yeah, kind of like bringing it back around to the kind of question as a whole. I think Vincent Kompany, he will get given more time than anyone else because of who he is. And personally, I really hope that he gets enough time to turn it around and that he can kind of change everything there and like put things in place so that this financial situation that they're in like, never happens again. And it'd be really nice to see him like develop as a manager and go on to big things. And I think there's been like a trend, hasn't there, of people hiring legends as managers, and like we saw with Juventus the other day, like it doesn't always work. Like sacking someone like Sarri, like experienced manager who's won stuff, and replacing him with someone who doesn't necessarily like have the same coaching experience. I think Vincent Kompany's a little bit different. I think he's shown this year that he can coach and tactically he can be innovative and like try and work things out as the season's gone on. And the team has improved. Like he's improved on last season. He's improved the team as the season's gone on this year. I hope he gets given the time, but it's Anderlecht. There's so much pressure there.
Yeah, I think that was kind of the thing that I kept coming back to. You know, one of the things about Anderlecht that's always been pretty clear is just how enthusiastic, how fervent the fan base is. You know, it's not too many clubs have ultras that are as notorious as Anderlecht, especially in Belgium. So yeah, there's I think if he's given the time, I hope. I mean, I can't say with any sort of authority that he will, but yeah, essentially what you've been saying, Ben. You know, I hope that the club can reclaim the heights that they were once at, especially domestically, if not in European terms.